This portion of the John Fredericks Show is brought to you by Hargrave Military Institute. Learn more at hargrave.edu. Hargrave Military Institute. Build his future.
Joining us now is Congressman Phil Rowe, MD, from the 1st District of Tennessee. Congressman, always a pleasure to have you on our show.
John, thanks very much. I'm a sort of an occupant of your neck of the woods. I spent about the last year of my military time at Fort Eustis, Virginia.
I tell you what, you're right in our bailiwick.
Absolutely, great area, and a growing area. My goodness, I was back. It was years from the time I was in service back there, and what an explosion of growth in that area of Virginia.
It certainly has grown, which has caused traffic like you would not believe. Certainly not what you're accustomed to in Tennessee, but hopefully it's going to be fixed. We just passed in Virginia a landmark transportation package that hopefully will help us out a little bit. But pleasure to have you with us. Hey, I got to go to a clip here from your colleague in the Senate, Max Baucus, retiring, by the way, probably retiring after we got this clip on the coming train wreck.
Small businesses have no idea what to do, what to expect. They don't know what affordability rules are. They don't know when penalties may apply. They just don't know. People are going to be really confused. I tell you, I just see a huge train wreck coming down. And you and I have discussed this many times, and I don't see any results yet. I just see a huge train wreck.
Okay, that's Democratic Senator from Montana, Max Baucus, saying that we got a train wreck on the way. But now, Doctor, Obamacare, the employee end of it being delayed until after the midterms. What's up with that?
You know, Senator Baucus, I wish you'd talked to me beforehand. I spent 30 years in practice, a little over 30 years in Tennessee, and we went through this train wreck called TennCare, and we tried to reform our Medicaid system in Tennessee. I've lived through this, could have told them what was going to happen, tried to tell them what was going to happen, and no one listened. And John, I'm the chairman of the Subcommittee of Health, Employment, Labor, and Pensions, the part of the Affordable Care Act he's talking about, where the businesses are trying to get their arms around what to do. And this Monday, I met with a bunch of HR directors, human resource directors in Tennessee, and talked to them, and they're as confused as he is. And I've held 3 hearings outside of Washington about the effects on small business. Let me give you a couple of examples. We were in Concord, North Carolina, about a month and a half ago, and met with at a community college. Community college folks came up and said, Dr. Rowe, they said, our problem is now we can't hire enough adjunct faculty. Most community colleges don't have a full-time faculty. They use about 40% people who just teach 1, 2, or 3 classes. Because of this ruling, these professors can only teach 3 hours. Otherwise, they go over the 30-hour limit, which, as you know, full-time work used to be 35 to 40 hours a week. Now it's defined as 30. So businesses are cutting people back everywhere, and I can tell you story after story after story. Unless they're tone deaf, I don't know who they're listening to when they go out, because every small business, especially in the retail business, the restaurant business, entertainment business, those folks are being crushed by these regulations.
Well, now, here's my question. I want to get to the regulation part of it and the fact that it got put off by the Obama administration, one piece of it, to 2015. Isn't the Affordable Care Act written in such a way, Congressman Rowe, that it's got in there the specific implementation date? So how can the president just by fiat say, well, I'm gonna implement Part B, but I'm not going to implement Part A. I'm going to put Part C on hold. I mean, isn't it an all or nothing bill?
I think it's not a multiple choice test.
Right.
I agree with you, and I wrote the Congressional Research Service immediately when I saw this, because I don't think the president has the authority just to decide when he's going to implement the law. As you clearly pointed out, it has a start date. Now, I wish it didn't start at all. I mean,
right.
my preference would be to just get rid of the whole thing and do something that's understandable. And, you know, John, who got lost in all this? The patients did. I look and I go back home and see my doctor friends that I practiced with and patients that I've seen over the years, and they don't know what to do. You got the people that are actually going to be implementing this don't know what to do. And the Congressional Research Service, for our listeners out there, is a nonpartisan arm of the Congress that gives us Basically, if we ask about certain issues, they do it in a nonpartisan way. And there was a question about here, and this is legalese, and I'm not a lawyer, but basically they say if no one has standing, if no one has been harmed, then there's nobody that the courts wouldn't let you take the case up unless a business has been harmed. But I think you can, because I think an individual could say that they've been harmed. And I think you probably will see litigation with this, whether it'll get through the court system in time or not. To your point, I don't think the president can do what he did.
Congressman, the other central piece of the Affordable Health Care Act is the fact that there's all these people uninsured that are supposed to now go and buy the insurance, and you're supposed to take that money, put it in the exchanges, and that's part of the fuel that's going to fund it all. Here's the problem. Survey after survey is now showing that a majority of people that don't have insurance right now are still not going to buy the insurance. They're going to pay the $99 tax fee, and so that's not factored in. So if that plays out economically, this is a catastrophe, isn't it?
Yes, what happens, what they did was they forced young people, but by this mandate and penalty that the Supreme Court ruled was a attack, they could do that. The mandate was constitutional. The idea is we're going to force a lot of young, healthy people to buy a product they may not want to buy, health insurance, and charge them a lot more to make the rate for someone who's older and sicker a little more affordable. Mm-hmm. Well, what happens is you're going to double or triple rates for young people. The problem with it is, and when I read the bill, and it doesn't say a lot about my intelligence, John, but I read that entire bill, and I've had remembered a part where what's the penalty if you don't pay the penalty? In other words, the $95 fine you talked about are 1.5%, 2.5%, of your income, and it goes up to $700 or some percent of your income by 2016. Well, here's what it is. When they wrote the law, the penalty is there's no civil or criminal penalty for not paying it, and the recourse that the IRS has is to withhold a tax refund that you have. I suppose if you had an earned income tax credit, they could do that. Mm-hmm. But guess what? They put all that on the honor system the first year. There's not anybody going to check it at all. I mean, this is a debacle, and I'm being kind when I say that. So the young people are going to figure out pretty quick, hey, I don't have to buy that. And guess what? If I get sick on the way to the hospital because I'm guaranteed issue, I have community rating, means it's the same as everybody pays, and I can't be denied because of any pre-existing condition, I can get the insurance anytime I want to. This is a joke.
Right, so they're just going to wait until they need it, and in the meantime, that's the thing. If you're 25 or 26 or 27, 19, and you're on your own and you're single and you're not under your parents' health insurance and your company's not providing it, well, why now are you going to pay $2,000? You're just not going to do that. I think this was a flaw in the system from day one. But I do have to compliment you, Congressman, on actually being one of the only people I've talked to have actually read the bill.
It was a nightmare to go through that thing, but I've only been here 4.5 years. I spent most of my time in the operating room and delivering my own voters. I'm an OBGYN doctor, and that's why I've delivered almost 5,000 babies. Not to say it as a joke, but it's actually turning out to be true. A lot of the people I've delivered are voting for me now, so they're old enough to. But
that's a great strategy.
That a bill that affected every American citizen, it was my duty to read that and understand it as best I could.
So what happens now, Congressman?
Well, I think this week, we're going to vote. We're going to debate the rule today on the House floor, and I'll be down there doing that on there are two bills. One is the individual mandate, and two is the business mandate. Put that off for a year, both of them. And we feel like that if the businesses are not going to be forced to do this within the next year, why should an individual be punished? And it makes good sense to me to parallel the two and put them together. And we'll see what happens. The president said he's going to veto it if it gets through the Senate, but I don't see why you would do something to an individual, to a business, to allow them more time and not give the individual more time also. And by the way, $2,000 will be a small amount. I talked to our insurance commissioner in the state of Tennessee. Individual rates. This is for a young person going out to buy insurance. Those rates are going to go up 45 to 70% this year, and for small business, 50 to 55%. Unbelievable.
I mean, it's just economically untenable. The whole thing is going to collapse under its own weight. Dr. Rowe, final question here. We're almost out of time. If you're able to get this delayed, and I think you will because logic is going to, I think, prevail, hopefully, what does this do to the midterms? Is this going to be the central issue now?
I think the two issues, I certainly believe it'll be a major issue. It's not going to go away, John. Look, healthcare affects every single one of us in a very personal way, and those decisions should be made between a doctor and the patient, the family. That's who should be making them. And right now we've got insurance companies and government sticking their nose in it. It's going to be a huge issue. There's no question. It will not go. It shouldn't go away. And we do need healthcare reform. As a matter of fact, I'll put a plug in. I'm chairman of the Health Committee on the Republican Study Committee, and as of today, we've about finished, and I won't say what it is yet because I haven't presented it to the group, but we've got an alternative bill ready to go.
Which is?
Well, it's as I said, we haven't presented it to the membership yet. We've a group of about 6, 7 of us have been working on it now for a couple of months, and I'll be glad to come back on once we have announced it to the full Republican Study Committee so they understand it. I don't want to preempt them or anything, but it's done. It's much simpler. It's patient-centered, market-oriented, and a lot less expensive. No new taxes and so forth.
Okay. We're going to have you back on, Congressman, so you're able to explain what that is. I'm sure we'll be excited over it. Final question, immigration reform. Where is Phil Rowe with this?
I think we do need there's no question we need immigration reform. I met with a group of Hispanic leaders in my community on Monday, and I sat down in a roundtable discussion. I said, let's have an open debate here about this. I think everybody that I've talked to insists on verifiable border control, and I think if you don't have that, you can't get meaningful immigration reform. And I served in the 2nd United States Infantry Division 40 years ago this year in Korea. We control the border, the 38th parallel. We can do it here. We can't stop everybody. But without meaningful border security, the rest of it doesn't amount to a hill of beans.
Why can't we de-link securing the borders with amnesty? Why do they have to be combined? That's what we don't understand.
That's a great point. You're absolutely right. They can be delinked and should be delinked, and I think that's exactly what the House is going to do. You're not going to see another big mega 1,200-page bill. As we do big bad up here. Anytime there's something big, there's a bunch of stuff in there that you have to put a clothespin on your nose to vote for. I think you need a simple, straightforward bill of border security so that everyone can understand it. And once you verify that, and there's some other things you can do in the meantime. And I think there is going to be immigration reform in the House, but it will not be the Senate bill.
Okay, sounds excellent. We really appreciate your time. Congressman, if our listeners want more information on what you're working on, where do they go?
www.roe, that's roe.house.gov.
Okay, Congressman Phil Rowe from the great state of Tennessee. He's all over this Affordable Health Care Act. Doctor, thanks for being with us today.
Thanks, John. Thanks for having me on.